You are listening to the Park Flyer Podcast, where we discuss our RC adventures.
Welcome to the Park Flyer Podcast, where we discuss the ups and downs of the new RC Flyer. Join your hosts, Michael and Jay, as they take flight at the park. Now on with the show.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Park Flyer Podcast. I'm Michael from Arizona. With me always is my good friend
Shannon G and Mesa AZ.
And we're still missing Jay, but welcome everyone to the Park Flyer Podcast. I think Jay is on the road, going to his secret location.
Yeah.
We're gonna, I know, right? We're gonna let him come back to the show and tell us where he's at, I think. But anyway, can
we play that game? Where's Jay?
Where's Jay? Where's Waldo? Kind of like that thing.
Can we put him in like a red and white,
Yeah.
sweater and a hat?
We'll put a little map and stick pins everywhere.
Yeah.
Closest person wins the prize. Now, actually, he's headed out. So I just talked to him a couple days ago, or actually day before yesterday, and he's doing great. So he's chasing a moving truck down, across the U.S. But we should hear from him soon. I think he'll get there this coming up week. So we're happy.
I hope
about
it's his
that.
moving truck, not somebody else's.
Yeah, no, I think it is his moving truck. If he is chasing someone else, is in big trouble. Oh, goodness. Well, last week we were talking about some batteries, and I just want to let you know that the Horizon guys reached out to me. Tony Quist reached out, and we were talking about the Spectrum batteries and how the lead was no longer attached to the Spectrum batteries.
The balance.
Yeah,
lead,
the balance lead, correct. Yep. And he mentioned that he thought that was, or he told me that was basically legalities. People, I guess, plug it in the wrong place, they start fires or whatever. And he said, I think it was lawyer driven. So it's just the way it goes. We're such a litigious society, but they've got a lot of money tied up in it.
Everybody else
uses it.
Leads.
Yeah, that's true. But,
It's kind of the norm.
I don't know. They got a lot of money tied up in it, and they've got all that smart battery technology. So more power to them. But I still might wind up buying a new, have to get a Spectrum charger or find someone that has one so I can always
they're
charge.
Basically, actually, I saw one on Facebook Marketplace cheap.
Oh, well, there you go.
So
maybe I should go get it. So,
but it's the same technology, the ISDT, and
that is correct.
They're exactly the same.
Yeah,
and they bought the rights to the smart battery, basically.
Gotcha.
So kind of because there was all kinds of smart battery stuff that was going to be part of ISDT.
Yeah,
and now it's just not there. So kind of a bummer, but well.
That's how it works.
Yep.
Yeah. Buy it and show it. I think that's what they call it.
Yep.
We are excited to kind of talk a little bit about your event that you just had. It was a GunSmoke event at your field. And we are excited because we understand you brought some hardware home.
Yeah, so this was the GunSmoke Scale Classic, and it's the second year that we've been competing under the National Association of Scale Air Modelers rules, very similar to the other Scale Masters, but NASA's kind of like a subset of the AMA. Right. So basically the same rules that are used at the NATS.
Gotcha.
And where GunSmoke used to be a qualifier for Scale Masters, there's not really a qualifier for the NATS. You can just show up, but it gives you practice and familiarity with, and practical application of, getting ready for the NATS. So it's actually a good thing. We're the only West Coast NASA event. There's more in the Midwest and East,
right?
But it's just cool that last year we had 12 competitors, and people flew in different classes. This year we had 24.
Wow, that's quite the upgrade.
We doubled it. So that's you say it's not a lot, but it's double. That's significant in any way you slice the math. So it would have been more. We actually, our good friend Paul Stenberg was on his way. He was going to come over and compete, and his car broke down, his truck hauling his trailer. Yeah, it was a mess. He got stuck in Palm Springs. I was on the phone with him. So
that's a bummer.
It was, because he was all ready to compete. He was going to compete in both the ARF and the EDF classes, which we'll talk about later. But it's real. And there was another guy. So there's going to be like up to 26 competitors. Wow. We had competitors from, of course, the Valley and Arizona in general, also from New Mexico and Texas. Nice. There's a large group from Texas that came over that were that Tim Dickey, who's the CD for the event, had befriended and convinced them to come over, and we had so much fun. It's very competitive,
Right.
but the energy that we had, especially for the new people competing, it was very enthusiastic, and lots of hoopla for the new guys. It wasn't like just sitting there marking them down for every little thing they did wrong. It was,
Right.
hey, you did good. You can do better, but you did good, and we're just glad you're here. So I was really excited to be part of that.
Well, very cool. That is kind of neat. So the classes, tell me the classes again. They were...
So the two new classes were EDF, which is one of them I competed in, and what they call the Super ARF. And those are what they call club classes. They're not official, but there's rules that are kind of there. And then there's the traditional classes, or the Pro-Am Sport and Pro-Am Sportsman. And that's kind of like the intro beyond Super ARF. Then there's the open scale and the team scale, which is where you compete with two, a builder and a pilot, and they both have to be there for that. And then there's the expert sportsman. So those are the classes that are out there. I competed in EDF and Pro-Am Sportsman, and probably should have competed in the Super ARF, and we'll kind of talk about that as we go along. But the cool thing with EDF, so EDFs, we don't fly them as long as, say a gas powered plane, or even in a propeller driven, prop. Sure. But so the number of maneuvers that you're required to do in your routine is dropped down to 8 from 10. And there's 5 of those maneuvers that are the standard, everyone's got to do the same 5 maneuvers, and then add in 5 for the regular competition, 3 for this one. So, but with that, and with the aircraft I chose, I didn't have too much trouble with keeping my, I came down with battery. I wasn't like sputtering down the runway on landing.
Didn't run out.
But
dead stick.
That was the real concern. But with that 8 maneuvers, it was just right, and I didn't do amp hungry maneuvers other than required figure 8. So with that, in the EDF class, I managed to come home second place.
Nice. Congratulations.
Thank you. And in the Pro-Am Sport, which is one I've competed in most of the time I've been, I took third this year, which was the same as I did last year. So,
good.
So maintaining the status quo, but definitely saw improvement. I mean, even just in my scores from the previous year, it was pretty tight in the Pro-Am Sport. Steve Gladstone, one of our club members, won the EDF just a few points above me, and he flew a smaller little 70 millimeter EDF. Just some of his maneuvers, he just kind of nailed a little better than I did.
Right.
Bob Ruff was the other competitor, and he was flying one of his 3D printed T2 Buckeyes, and he flew it great, but he had some mechanical issues, so that brought his scores down just below mine. So, but I flew the SU-30 that I had recently acquired.
You acquired, right?
Just a few weeks before, and I've got couple EDFs laying around, and I was like, okay, well, which one should I fly? This one or that one? And then I got this one. It was like, wow, this thing is on rails, the way the previous owner set it up. It looks good. I got good scale picture of it. Like, I'm gonna fly it. And the first round, actually, I was in first place the first round. And my caller, Matt Ventura, he was like, you fly that thing better than you fly the T-28, the 210. I was like, wow. I mean, I've been flying the T-28 a lot longer. So
right.
But yeah, I flew the T-28 in the Pro-Am Sport, and I felt real comfortable with it. The only thing was probably the last day where I thought I was going to be able to pick up a few points. The wind changed, and so the direction I had to do my maneuvers in changed, and I. Obviously I can fly both directions, but when you practiced or you've flown that all weekend one way, and all of a sudden, boom, you got to go the other. It's like, it was a little wobbly here and there on some of the maneuvers. Like, great.
Yeah.
So
you get comfortable flying the one direction, and then you're like, that's the stick goes this way now instead of that way. So
yeah,
I get it.
But as mentioned, we had a lot of new first time competitors especially in the Super ARF class. There was a guy, Butch. He came over from Mexico, him and his wife, and Butch was a hoot. He's a great guy. So enthusiastic. He had a T-28 that he'd done up in like the drone director colors, the gray, red tail.
Right.
And he did it. He did it real nice, and he had all the documentation for it. He had some mechanical issues with it. He actually had the sound system in it too. A couple of guys have put that sound system in. So I don't know if that really doesn't add enough to, to change the rule, change your score, but it's just kind of
Right.
cool to have
Right.
that. But when he competed the first time, it was like everyone's like, "Oh yeah, all right, Butch got his first flight in. Yeah, he's one of us now." So it was really cool.
Yeah, it's always
Yeah.
good to have support, where people are trying to,
Yeah.
get you involved and at least give you the kudos.
Yeah.
It's not that I've been to one. I've been to actual big contests, and so sometimes if you're you get there and you're kind of off on your own, it's not as fun as if everybody's slapping you on the back, telling you what a good job you did.
Yeah.
Kind of makes you more involved.
And I convinced Barrett, our good friend Barrett Hockhouse, to come out.
Yes.
And he flew the Conestoga, his scratch built Conestoga, and he flies that thing really, really well. But just that class is just really, there's a lot of competition in it.
Right.
Alan Gibbs flew his the F-22 ARF turbine, AF turbine.
Oh yeah,
and and his plane he had to change at the last minute. He was going to fly a different airplane, but it crashed the weekend before.
Oh.
He was still waiting for parts like Friday morning. Like he barely got the thing in the air Friday morning for the first 2 rounds of competition. So
well, kudos to him that having an airplane that you're putting it together when you're just before you're getting to fly.
Yeah, well, it was a part that broke when he had been flying it.
Yeah, but still, I mean, anytime you replace something, you want to remade it, make sure it's all trimmed out. So
yeah, and a lot of the normal competitors, Tim Dickey, who's a CD, Noel Hunt, he's been part of this for a while. Bill Adams, he does this and he does IMAC. He's been in the hobby for a long, long time.
Right.
What was really kind of cool. So there's team scale, and the team scale is, the one person builds it and then one person flies it. Right. And you got to prove you built it, which, it's not too hard. Most people take pictures and,
sure.
Okay, yeah, we know we built it, So Tim Dickey had been flying his PT-23 in competition for a couple of years now, and he built it. He flew it. Well, this year he had Bill Adams fly it for him. So because Bill's a very good flyer. He actually usually wins. I think he won Pro-Am Sport, no, Pro-Am Pro. He won, and something else. He's a really good pilot, just a great guy too. So Tim let Bill fly his plane, and Tim was surprised because he flew the plane differently than Tim did.
Sure,
and he was like, I can't believe some of the things you did with that airplane that I was not willing to try, and you did it. So it was really
surprise.
Yeah, it's like, hello, and this is not a cheap airplane. It's a scratch built.
Yeah,
it's got a 7-cylinder radial engine, which there aren't many of it was the Robart one, which is a work of art, and there's not that many of them in existence. Tim owns 4 of them in different states. Yeah, he basically gets them and fixes them, puts them back together, and wherever he can find one, he picks one up. But Bill just kind of made that thing hum, and so they won team scale because of that. So that's kind of cool awesome to see him do that.
Well, good. Kudos to Tim.
Yeah. We had 2 turboprops, the PC-21. We had Steve Gladstone, who'd flown his last year in the same class I did, and then another guy, Stephen Cole, had a bigger one, a really big one, and he did really well. Actually, he won the overall for the whole weekend award, the Arizona State Championship, because he accrued so many points in all the classes he flew in. But when those planes are in the air, man, those PC-21s they're so on. They're so precise.
Yep.
It's funny. There was the one guy was flying it. He wasn't flying it exactly as we're supposed to, I guess is probably the best term, but I think he had said, I need to fly it this way because that's just what I've done. And if, make it or break it. So with that said, he was still able to win. It wasn't like he broke a rule per se. It was just usually when you do maneuvers, you use them like right in front of you, in front of the judges. And he did them off center, like off the center line of the runway, which, which was, it's just not normal. At least, But if you ask to do it, say I need to do it this way because of the aircraft, they will accommodate that. So, but I just prefer doing it right in front of them. I'll stand right behind my judges, and when I'm doing my, whatever maneuver I'm doing, start and end, you pretty much either side of that, and especially the beloved figure 8.
Yes. Wow, those turboprops sound utterly amazing in the air. It is truly
Oh,
amazing
yeah.
to hear those things go. It's crazy.
Yeah.
I've seen them fly, and there's a couple, guys at the jet events that have them, and they're truly amazing. It's just crazy.
So what's your? There's two schools of thought with the turboprop at a jet event. What's your
Mhm.
school of thought? Are you cool with it or?
Yeah, I mean, I'm cool with it. It's I mean, I know that there's some questions about if it's a true jet versus it's got a propeller on it, so obviously it's a
Right.
propeller. But the problem that you run into is that it is a turbine aircraft, so it falls into the turbine waiver, right? You have to do
Exactly.
that. The fact
Yeah.
that it has a propeller on it versus internal blades that push the suck squeeze bang blow of a jet engine, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, I guess if you're, I'm okay with it because I think that the
Okay.
turbine is a turbine, right? It just
I
doesn't
hear
matter. But the problem that you run into is that if you said no, turboprops can't come to jet events, where do they go? I mean, there's not so many of them that they could have their own class, their own
Yeah.
thing. It's when you see them, there's maybe one or two. I
Yeah.
think if there was 50-50, you might be
Yeah,
able
that
to
would
pull
be.
off kind of a turboprop event. But I think, I don't want to exclude anybody, but that's kind of my thought process. I know there's some guys that are the purists out there that say, no, it's not really a jet, so you can't really fly it in a jet event. But every jet event I've been to, they've allowed it. So, I mean, it's more of a turbine than a jet event. So,
Well, if you didn't know, actually, for the Arizona Jet Rally, they actually didn't allow it like a couple years ago. We do now,
oh yeah,
but yeah, it was we. Somebody, I wasn't my rule.
right.
The CD made the choice and got a lot of flack for it, but
Mm-hmm.
I think we've since changed that because it was like, come on, guys, it's like we're gonna fly to a couple Warbird events, that's it. But
Yeah, I think
that's
that's why you it would be better maybe to call it a turbine event as opposed to a jet event.
yeah, and I'm agree with that too. It's like
Yeah.
and we've got an electric jet event I'll talk about later coming up that somebody's like, well, I can fly my turbine because it's got an electric motor that starts it. It's like, no,
Oh yeah, that's kind of pushing it.
yeah,
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, I've seen some P-51 radials that have electric starts
yeah.
too, but that doesn't
Yeah.
necessarily qualify them for an electric. Well, that's very, very cool. Well, we would like to congratulate you for that because it's I know it's a big event and you're you're striving very hard to increase your getting better, and so the fact that you're able to advance is awesome. I might have to come up there and try it once or twice, maybe.
Yeah, you need to. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
It really gets your mind thinking. Like, 'cause sometimes you just go out, you fly, you're like, fly.
Mm-hmm.
Here, you're like, okay, I got to be on my game.
Right.
I gotta,
Right.
I mean, even if you're at like an event, like just a fun fly event or whatever, there's not a lot at stake other than you want it to look good if you want your plane to
Sure.
be considered for whatever awards you win. But
Sure.
this is you're flying for marbles.
Yeah, that's. I mean, I've done it on the real scale version, so I mean,
yeah.
I've done that, but doing on a RC side, I haven't really done anything.
Yeah.
But it'd be kind of fun to do. So the maneuvers kind of go over. There's required maneuvers, and then there's some that you make up or that you just add to it, or free maneuvers, or
right. So there's a list of maneuvers that NASA recognizes, and you can kind of and there's also like if you can explain it, you can do it. That's kind of the thing. But the required maneuvers, so you have to fly for the regular event, regular classes other than the jet. It's 10 maneuvers, and the required maneuvers are takeoff.
Right,
obviously.
that's obvious.
A fly pass, which is good for making sure your plane's in trim. Get it all straight out. So you used to do that. A figure 8.
Okay.
So right across the center in front of the judges, and then a landing.
Mm-hmm.
Got to land the plane, and then the last one's not really. It's kind of a catch-all. It's called flight realism. So how real does your plane look the entire time, from the time you taxi it out to the time you land it? How real is it? So like even with electric planes, when we taxi a plane out, like an electric plane or jets, usually,
Right.
the motor's off at some point, right?
Right.
So we actually, I'll set my trim up so I've got, the engine's running no matter what, just like a real plane would. So that's flight realism. Using the retracts, using the flaps, whatever, the speed brakes, all that stuff.
Sure.
So then for the, for your other option, well, not optional, but required maneuvers you do of your own choice. It can be anything, it can be a roll. Of course, it has to be a plane that can do a roll. If your plane can't do a roll, you can't do that, or,
Right.
If you got you've got a Cessna Skylane, you're not really typically going to roll.
Yeah, you're not really supposed to do a roll in it.
Yeah. 737, you know, do a roll in those, unless you're Tex Johnson, but, so we like my kind of go-to maneuvers, I'll do a descending 360 degree turn. So you straight up high, do 63 kind of at the bottom.
Sure.
I'll do an ascending 180 turn, a touch and go. And that's actually 2 maneuvers. So like with a plane, you're comfortable doing touch and goes, touch is one, the go is another. If you want to do like your standard approach, you want to do, I forget whatever, there's another pattern approach, like indirect or whatever. You can select that. Putting your retracts down is considered a maneuver. I did a dirty pass with the Sukhoi where I had the speed brake, and because this plane had flaperons, which was, it's like, okay, we understand, that's just the plane. Sure. But, I'd come by and do a nice slow, kind of high alpha pass with everything hanging out and then pull it in and take off. And then some guys, they'll do like an Immelman turn or a lazy eights. A lot of the older, like if they're flying like World War I or Golden Age planes, like doing a slip, because some airplanes just have that ability to kind of slide in, and like a Cub or like anything like that just looks really good with a nice slip coming in.
Sure.
Off the thing. So pretty standard maneuvers. There's some guys that'll try to squeeze in like all these crazy ones. Like, guys, you don't have to. Especially the guys who are flying like World War I planes. There's only so much that plane could do, and it was kind of in its infancy. So you do loops and rolls, but you can't do it at 10,000 miles an hour.
So mentioning that, it's if you had a World War II or World War I airplane basically that could only do maybe a loop or maybe a roll, but I mean that's 2 maneuvers. Yeah, how do you come up with the other maneuvers? I guess you could do a touch and go would be one maneuver, and then something different, maybe.
Yeah, the touch and go. There's 2.
I don't know what else.
Well, I mean, you can do like you said, your approach, the way you do your approach.
Oh, okay. So the approach would be considered,
and like a Chandelle, things like that are pretty even that ascending 180. I mean, any plane can do an ascending 180. If you can't, you shouldn't be flying. But so things like that should be okay.
Okay. Well, that makes sense.
I know, like in and also there's a distinction too. If you're flying an aircraft that is aerobatic capable, you say yes, I'm flying it as an aerobatic capable airplane as opposed to I'm not. So that's another kind of thing you got to check off on your little list of things that you're flying as. Oh,
gotcha. Well, very cool. And then you mentioned the EDF, so that you fly the EDFs. They actually shrink those, so you don't fly, but I mean, I got 3.5 minutes on mine.
Yeah, so I was pushing about 4 to 4.5 minutes on mine, and I was flying the Sukhoi. I had gotten some 6,000 thick cells, and I was coming down, with about 15 to 20% left in it. So, pushing them a little bit, but I didn't. Right. I never felt like, I'm not going to make it. And I even had to go around or, do an orbit because there's 3 flight stations and there's potentially all 3 of you are doing your maneuvers at the same time, and usually a different, spacing or whatever. But just the fact that, someone's coming in to land, you can't do your touch and go if they're landing. So you got to, just kind of orbit or whatever. And that's totally, you just let the judges know, hey, I'm, because of traffic, I'm orbiting, or, gotcha. And there's even, there was a time where I was literally in the middle of a figure 8 and this plane something happened with the plane and they lost control and I had to get out of the way of it. I'm like, I'd like to.
How does that affect you?
Well, it's up to the judges, but I'm like, I'd really like to redo my figure 8 because of, I was avoiding another aircraft. Sure. And they're like, okay, we'll let you do that. So start over.
Gotcha.
So it's going to be up to the, if you just had you just came in bad and you want to start, that's not going to work. But if you avoided an accident, there was.
So are there multiple airplanes flying?
Yeah,
at
there's
once?
3 flights. There's 3 flight lines potentially flying at one time. So there's 3 sets of judges. Yeah,
Gotcha.
so
3 sets
yeah.
of judges. Okay.
So we, and you alternate between you get pretty much all the judges at least once, and then one set you'll get twice usually, just the way it works out because we do 4 rounds.
Yeah.
And they just so you can fly up to 4 rounds. If you only fly 2, that's enough because it's your best 2 that count.
Oh, gotcha.
So because like with my scores, a lot of times it's like my best 2 were good, and then the person who beat me was just their 2 rounds were just a little bit better than mine.
Slightly better. Yeah.
And so when you think one's maybe they'll have a mulligan or whatever, it's just kind of like, oh.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I had a contest one time where the winds were really howling, and everybody was like, man, we don't know if we can go fly it. And of course, my experience I'm not a new pilot, so I've been doing it many, many years. And so they said, well, we may not get to all of you again tomorrow, so you're going to have to fly what you have and then, fly again. And I didn't want to run the risk, so I went out and flew during the winds.
Yeah.
So the next day, it was calm could be, and everybody get to fly twice. And then I was kind of whining about it. I was like, man, I had to fly with all these winds, and I didn't wind up winning, but I still placed okay, but I just felt like I kind of got,
And
I had the option to, but I chose to do it.
And that's the way it was.
They were kind of
even on Friday, we had 2 rounds. I flew my first round, and then it was so quick once we had our lunch break to get up to people just didn't want to fly that second round that day because the wind was a little rough, but it got rougher the next day. So I was like, okay, well, I'm just going to take my chances. It wasn't anything I couldn't handle. So
sure. And they don't. So do they take all 4 and get rid of the lowest 2, or do they just you progress, and if you do better, they take that score?
Get the best 2.
If you do worse, you keep that score.
You just take the best.
So it's just the best 2 out of 4.
2 out of 4.
Well, that's pretty cool. So, well, good. And the judges worked great. It sounds like everybody had a great time. They were out there just.
Sometimes you hear people complain about the judges. Oh, they scored me on this, they scored me on that. And I don't
hear that everywhere.
It's like I don't get into that. I looked at my score for a couple of things. It's like, well, I watched that guy fly, and I know I flew mine a little better. I don't know why, but just something. Sometimes you wonder what's going on with that. I know I flew better than that.
Right.
I knew, and also the disparity between the judges. Like, there's one judge gave me a 9, one judge gave me a 7. It's like, okay, what was that different in his brain that
That's one of the things we talk about as well as a parallax view. The judge sitting over on the left side will see different things than the guy on the right side. And if they're far enough away from each other, they can actually see different items. But, it's kind of subjective. It's everything else. They watch what it is. They have an idea of what it should look like and way they think that it should look like. And another judge, maybe it's a little bit different in their head. And maybe it looks like you're off heading or, positive or negative. And so then they just count that off. And it just... But, that's the whole point of the game is to fly to the judges, visuals, not yours. Right. And so you may think it was perfect maneuver, but to a judge, you got to fly to, where you can get your score. And that's probably the toughest part of any contest, is you got to fly to what the judge wants to see versus what you think is the best. So it's crazy. Well, I'm glad that you were able to bring home some hardware and hang it in your shop there. And congratulations once again. We are out of time, but it's always good to hear that these events are going and that there's new people that are coming in. It's always good. The fact that you doubled it is amazing, and hopefully you'll double it again next year, or at least get more.
The goal isn't to double it next year, but at least go up by 25%. So
okay, well that's a fair value.
24 is where we were the last Scale Masters event. So we had a kind of off year, then we brought it back up. So we're thinking we can keep at it, and all the talk's been positive. Yeah, again, hopefully this adds to that. I said I got nothing bad to say about anybody. I had a good time.
Right.
I brought home a couple pieces of hardware, and
trophies are good.
Brought my planes home to fly again, and maybe I'll fly next year. Maybe I'll fly something else. So.
Yeah. Now, was there any before we go? Was there any major accidents or anything? None of that stuff, right?
Well, yeah. So one of our club members, he was flying It was his first. Dick Roford, he was flying his the little air tractor. Yeah, I used to have one. That
Okay.
great,
Mhm.
great plane.
Mhm.
It's actually a good first intro plane for scale, I would say. Very
Sure.
aerobatic and easy to fly. But he lost orientation or something, and he went right into the right between the pit box and the light box. It was like, I was like running for cover, but he just by chance had a spare fuselage at home, and he went home and he put it all together, and he was back the next day flying. So
wow, that's a good pit crew right there. Put your airplane back together.
And then Bob Ruff had I was calling for Bob Ruff when
right.
He was flying his T2 Buckeye. He went to taxi out, and just as he gets ready to turn, he loses a wheel, and so he's like, well, can I, I didn't really start my routine. Can I start over if I get the wheel fixed? Oh yeah, come on. So he brings it in, we tighten the wheel up. And as soon as we take off, sure enough, that same wheel, as soon as we take off, comes off. So he flies his routine. And when he comes into land, he greased it. He came down perfect, on nose and, left, kept the right one just right to the end there, and actually made the turn towards the runway, but he couldn't taxi in, so he got some points off for that. But that was pretty minor, and but things like that. There might have been one other crash. There was a couple of close calls with the 3 planes flying at a time. There was one time where it was real close. There was like oh moment for everybody. We're like watching. Oh,
yeah.
Oh, yeah, that would have been a lot of hardware.
Yeah, you hear that sucking sound coming out of there.
Yeah.
It's like, holy smokes. Yeah, that's funny. Well, we're sorry that Paul didn't get to make it. I know that at the Electric Festival, we were flying our T-28s, he and I were, and he mentioned, somebody mentioned, hey, Paul, your prop is turning. And he goes, yeah, it's meant to do that. So he was prepping and flying the routine, and it's the first time we flew formation, and I did the same routine. I followed him around. I think you were in there too, where we were doing, he was calling him out. So that was my first time doing, kind of those maneuvers. So it was fun. And so we're kind of sad that he wasn't able to be there, but we're glad everything worked out and that he got everything fixed and, was back on the road. So it's good for him. So hopefully we'll see him at the next event. So. Well, that does it for us for this week. Once again, congratulations to everyone that attended the event. Is there another one coming up down the road at some point this year?
Only event we got left is the E-Jet Days, Friday and Saturday, May 2nd, 3rd, and then a couple of EF1 races, and the E2Ks are starting to come out. More people have those, so they're actually going to start racing those hopefully in May.
Oh,
and then the winter, the summer hiatus as far as events, but hopefully go out and fly a few hours in the morning. It's cool.
Absolutely. Oh, good. All righty. Well, from Arizona, I am Michael.
And Shannon G. and Mesa AZ.
And we will see you in 2 weeks.
That's fine.
You have been listening to the Park Flyer Podcast. Thank you for joining us, and we look forward to your next visit. Please give our show a star rating and review, and feel free to email us your questions, topics, or suggestions to parkflyerpodcast@gmail.com.